So in John chapter 5, we have a paralyzed man who's been paralyzed his whole life, basically, and he wants to be healed, but he can't get into this mystical pool in order to be healed. And Jesus comes by and says, "Do you really want to be healed?" And then he says, "Get up," and he is instantly healed. But instead of saying thank you or anything, he just sort of kind of dumbfoundedly walks off, obeying Jesus and holding his mat. When he's caught holding his mat on the Sabbath, he tells him, "Oh, well, the man who healed me told me to do it." And Jesus comes back to him later and tells him, if you keep on sinning, something worse is going to happen to you. Don't keep on sinning. And this man, again, there's no gratefulness or anything. In fact, what he does is he goes and tells on Jesus to the religious elite. Says, "Oh, that's who it was who told me to do this." And there's this fearfulness of the Jewish elite, and this just lack of recognition, in spite of seeing a miracle that should have really been throwing off his red lights that, hey, the Messiah, someone great in God's sight is here. There's no gratefulness. It's just, I want to protect myself after this great healing. And this story really, sometimes to me, a teaching in John for many years, it's always like a sort of a surprising story. What I've come to is basically that this is the third of three individual stories we are meant to look at, to look at different ways that the gospel is being received, and to sort of see in our hearts the comparison. We have Nicodemus in chapter 3, who is of the religious elite, people who should kind of be Jesus's, the red carpet group who are bringing and inviting Jesus in to begin his work. And yet Nicodemus is coming in the middle of the night. He is coming quietly because he sees the things Jesus is doing. He's saying, this clearly, when I look at Scripture, he's a great scholar. This is what I would expect the Messiah to be doing. But he comes in the middle of the night, and he doesn't tell anyone after his conversation with Jesus. He keeps it secret. And then we have this man, this Jewish man who is, he's paralyzed his whole life. He's healed, and yet he doesn't go and tell people. He even goes to tell on Jesus so that he doesn't get in trouble for Jesus making him hold the mat on Sunday. He's so unserious and unthankful and not looking out for the Messiah that he just completely blows past it as thinking of his own sort of safety above all things. And then we have, in contrast, in John chapter 4, this Samaritan woman who is this despised woman, even in her own community, this despised woman, and yet she hears the gospel. Once she knows that Jesus is the Messiah, even though he calls out her sin, she goes and tells all of her friends, and she witnesses about who Jesus is. And this is meant to show us something. It's meant to show us sort of the stubbornness of the Jewish people at that time, that people were not receiving Jesus as they should have. There was this sort of dynamic of people seeing what Jesus was doing, seeing the evidence, the clear evidence in front of them that he was the Messiah, and yet there was this rejection of him, even though they saw the miracles that should have demonstrated it. And yet there was this reception of him by the very people who were sort of cast off by the Jewish people, the very people who in many ways rightly were, because they had a sort of blasphemous religion that was ignoring Scripture. And yet what John is highlighting here, and what Jesus was highlighting, is that these people received him. And what a shame it is on the Jewish people who were supposed to be receiving him. And yet it also tells us this sort of inversion sort of story, invertive sort of reality story, that oftentimes the people who seem the most religious, who may be the ones that we think that they're going to help, when there's a good cause that we see God is clearly doing, that these people are going to be the ones who are going to do it. But oftentimes it's not. It is the people who we think are sort of the people who are cast aside, who are looking for God because of their sinfulness, because they recognize their sinfulness. And this is a key ingredient of the reception of the gospel, of people that are really going to come to God's side, is people who recognize their sinfulness. And that is, I think, really, really, really what Jesus is trying to highlight, what John is highlighting also here, that there needs to be a recognition of one's sinfulness in order to really come in line with what the Messiah is doing. And so we all need to be considerate of that, especially that that we are recognizing our sinfulness, that we recognize that we have fallen short of the glory of God, and that we need him desperately. And having that sort of thing that says, if you come to me, Lord, I am giving my life over to you, and I'm going to run in the way that you say run. I don't care about the consequences. And that's what we sort of see with the Samaritan woman, that we don't see with these two Jewish examples that we get on either side in this story.